and web design. So yes, social media is my thing, but it's not the only thing that I can answer questions about. So I just want to point that out as well. More folks come in. Good morning. Good morning. Okay, so who wants to be the first person?
I'll be brave, Brittany. I don't mind. So my question actually is going to get off of social media and even the web a little bit and ask about what you think about print, marketing in the state of Vermont, because Vermont is a little different than a lot of other places. Print still is a thing here, flyers and stuff. But I just wanted to get sort of your, I guess, opinion on it, and how it, affects things here.
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, print is still alive and well in Vermont. Vermont's that quirky little state that's kind of like stuck in the 90s in some way. And that's exactly one of the ways that print marketing is still very alive and vibrant. So we do have, the main pieces of traditional media. So I think of like the 7 Days, the, Burlington Free Press is more syndicated. So I don't like to always include them in this list, but, 7 Days is the alternative independent voice of Vermont. We've got Addison Independent. We've got the other paper. We've got the Valley Reporter. We've got, which Addison Independent is Bang, which is a bigger newspaper group in the area. So there are more of these traditional types of media that oftentimes you can partner with them in both the print way, but also a lot of digital marketing channels. So a lot of these folks have events calendars that you're more than welcome to post on, their websites. You can oftentimes advertise in both print and digital. And these are pieces of media that, because these are also Vermonters who are running it. That's why I kind of leave Burlington Free Press out of this, because they don't necessarily get that Vermont culture all the time, because it's USA Today. This is an opportunity to work with other Vermonters in order to reach people that it depends on your target audience, who you're trying to reach. For your business, Sean, you're in the tourism industry. Folks are going to be looking at, magazines, especially more niche types of magazines and articles that are around tourism. I think of the one in Stowe that goes around, like Stowe Magazine. I think of, the magazines that are often seen in like the Vermont Country Store. These are people that, for you in particular, they're typically of the older-ish generation, and they do have dispensary income to come and visit Vermont. And oftentimes these are, repeat visitors of Vermont. These are also, I think about the times that we're in, and just the data that we saw from the Vermont Tourism Summit, where there's really a push for Vermonters to visit other parts of Vermont right now because of all the other things that are going on. So especially for your industry, it might be ideal to look at some of these more traditional pieces of media and try to reach people that are within the state, but to encourage them to come and stay at the 1824 house and visit the restaurant and just see a different part of Vermont that they may not have even experienced, even being in this state. So it's still a valid channel. I think it does depend on what industry you're in.
No, absolutely. No, I appreciate it though. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. First question down. Second one's a lot less scary.
Well, don't all jump out at once. I have
Brittany, I'll ask
I have a question about when we have sort of longer form videos that I want people to click on. So, like for example, the tailgate talks that we do.
Yeah.
I've been experimenting with just doing short clips and saying link in bio. Is that just the best I can do? Should I do the full length thing, even if I guess you really can't, but what's the best strategy for that?
Yeah. So Eric, and I want to make sure. So Laura, I'm going to answer yours next because you
Sure.
kind of unmuted at the same time. So when it comes to long form video, typically these are, I just using Tailgate Talks, putting it on YouTube, being able to reach people in a way that, they can see the full interview. I think you're doing the right thing, Eric, in shortening some of those videos that essentially become highlight clips for other channels such as YouTube Shorts, TikTok, and Instagram Reels. So long form video, it is helpful to have things on Google. In case folks don't know, or sorry, not on Google, on YouTube.
Yeah.
Don't know, Google owns YouTube. So those channels work together, kind of like how we think, Meta owns Facebook and Instagram. So we have to think about these channels as different opportunities to reach different audiences. So with Tailgate Talk in particular, the long form that is going on YouTube, what you add in the description, for example, this is all indexed in Google and actually helps your Google rankings. And especially if you are tying it back to the Mad River Valley's chamber website, like the visitor website. So you are naturally increasing your search engine optimization rankings by having that long form. Ultimately, your goal by creating short clips is having a hook in a highlight clip to encourage the driving of people on Instagram, on Facebook, like any Reels, TikTok, anywhere you're posting more of those shorts, to essentially watch it and either follow on those short form video platforms or to drive traffic to watch the full video. Because also with YouTube, there is opportunity to monetize a YouTube channel if you get to a certain parameter of followers, if you post a certain video. Same thing with TikTok also is social media you can end up monetizing, but it does have to fall into certain requirements. So this is how people that are posting more long form media encourage more views. That's why it's also important when you do post a YouTube video, if that's something that you really want eyes on, the algorithm will start to spin as soon as you hit upload and publish, but it'll spin faster and you'll gain more views, which then pushes your content out to more people if you're focusing on driving traffic within that 24 hours of you publishing it on YouTube. So thinking about what the ultimate goal here is, if the ultimate goal is you want people, like, they're going to get value from the information, getting to know the culture of the Mad River Valley, through the long form YouTube, your goal is really, how do I get more eyes on this within hopefully the first 24 hours of it being posted. So best practice, there are different ways to take a long form video. For example, I use Descript. It's a pretty affordable, that's what I use for the podcast and to record different like video SOPs for my interns, for example. Descript is a pretty easy video editing platform that a lot of smaller content creators use. And embedded within Descript is what they call the Underlord AI, where essentially it takes this long form content and it'll clip different highlight reels for you. So there are different pieces. There was a platform I used previously. I just didn't like it as much for what I needed because it wasn't as much like a one-stop shop. But there's also some one called Vizard. It's Wizard with a V. And essentially it's a video AI that you can upload, you know, that 30-minute tailgate talk, and it'll clip those shorts for you. It even writes captions that you can then edit and post. So there are different ways to have that more manual effort be done. Of course, there is, you know, a trade-off with a small subscription price, but there are best practices in creating short form out of the long form. But ultimately, your goal is to get more eyes on it faster.
Right. No, and I think I think I'm able to do that. And because I'm very conscious of what I write, and, you know, everything goes onto the playlist. There's a Tailgate Talk playlist.
Yeah.
You know, there's, you know, I'm very conscious about what goes into the description of the video in terms of having names and businesses and places and all that stuff. And then having blog posts about it, you know, I think also. but more directly,
Yeah.
Links, links in bio,
Yeah.
as opposed to like on the video.
Yeah.
I-
So
I
the thing
really
to
struggle
note
with that. Yeah.
is on Instagram, you can't add a link to the caption.
I
Now,
know.
if you're putting the link on there and pushing it out to Facebook, it does push out. Know that you can put up to 5 links on your link in bio. So definitely I would not recommend getting rid of the Mad River Valley's website one, but having that be the second one or however many you have, adding it to the rotation of the link in bio. That's still an absolute, like, if that's what like folks will go to, then I would have that in the caption. In addition to that, I would also make sure that you are sharing the clip that you are doing, or even just posting a screenshot of the frame of your recent tailgate talk and having the direct link in your Instagram stories, especially on the day that that video drops on YouTube. So I would have it in your promotion cycle that, let's say hypothetically, that Tailgate Talks launch every Monday. The long form goes out on YouTube, making sure that Monday morning you are posting an Instagram story with that direct link from the link sticker that directly goes to that video that announces, hey, we have a new Tailgate Talk with so-and-so of, with Sean Kramer of at 1824 House, because that also would give a notification to the person that you're interviewing that then they can share it. So it just starts this web of, let's get eyes on your videos faster. And then, so I would say that is, with the technology you're currently working with, that's a best practice. We could take it even further, and there are different ways to do chat marketing. That gets very technical, but that is when you've seen content creators before in their captions say, comment the word house, for example. I don't know, I'm just taking from your business name, comment the word house and we'll send you a direct link to the video. And people that comment that word, it triggers the DM automation on the back end to then send them an automatic direct message with that video. So that I would say is the most advanced and high level, and that takes a subscription with a program called ManyChat. But there are different ways to do it in a more affordable way, and I would say sharing on your Instagram stories definitely on the day that you are publishing it, but I would also make it a routine, maybe 2 days later, to say, like, in case you missed it, we dropped a new Tailgate Talk on Monday with the direct link. So that way you're keeping that algorithm spinning. In addition to in the caption saying the link is in our bio, just know that that takes a lot more manual effort to switch out the link every week. So it does become more of a habitual task than you probably want it to.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Laura, what do you got?
Thanks. So if you're on a limited budget, but you're trying to get people to come for a day trip to the Mad River Valley,
Yeah.
what do you think your, like, the best spending plan would be?
Yes. So it does depend on what you mean by limited budget. If we're talking like we just want to focus on organic social media, which is your time, is essentially the money you're putting into it. For your business, I'm assuming is tourism industry.
Yeah, well, I wear 2 hats. I'm the rec director, and I also manage the big craft fair Labor Day weekend.
Yes. So especially, yes, I do remember seeing you in the last one. It's good to see you again. So for both of these platforms, or both of the 2 different businesses that you're running, this strategy is also applicable. You might just have to tweak it based on which one you're working on. So when you are on social media, keep in mind that yes, media is great. That's how we control our narrative, but also the social pieces as well. So when we are thinking about how to get higher brand visibility, excuse me, especially I'm thinking the craft fair, where it's a lot of individuals that you're trying to bring to the craft fair itself. It's an event promotion. You want to think about where and who would these people already be talking to, and thinking about how can I engage with other businesses that are complementary, that are already talking to my target audiences. And yes, still having a media plan, but when we're thinking about how to grow our platforms, how to get more eyes on the media we're working so hard to push out, we need to make sure that we are building community. And depending on where you're at in your profile, I would make sure to look at who and how many people are you following, and setting a goal to follow more people within your complementary industries, within your neighborhoods, and doing a little bit more of that back end work of, if you only have a limited budget, that means that you're going to have to put in a little bit more time to do some engaging and having an engagement strategy with these businesses that you're following. You are liking and commenting on their posts in the public view. And then also when you're feeling comfortable, reaching out to them in more of a direct way on the back end, not in a salesy way, but just to start to make connections, to make sure that you are connecting with people and starting a conversation, especially to these businesses that are already talking to your target audience. So I'm thinking folks that sell different craft materials, the different vendors that you'll be having at the craft fair, really engaging with them in more of a personal way. So that way they are helping you market the event itself. So that way you don't have to, in a more organic grassroots kind of way. So that way, if you're not at a point to spend a little bit on paid advertising, which I'm happy to also go into, there are some affordable ways to do some paid advertising, especially with event promotions. That would be the best case scenario if it's truly $0 in your pocket. If you do have a little bit of a marketing budget, I would say, between $100 and $250, definitely thinking about boosting Facebook events with that target audience. And also thinking about, as Sean mentioned, what may be some more traditional media ways that you can utilize these event calendars that are all around the state, engaging with people that are more in the traditional media, thinking about how can you submit a press release, for example, to 7 Days, which is completely free, to announce some of these, exciting events that you're planning.
And what's your best suggestion for getting it printed? Just a unique tease. We send out a press release every year to 7 Days, but it's random. Seems random whether or not they print it.
Yeah, it is usually more of a digital ask, and these paid, they usually ask for payment for the print media. So just know that typically it's going to be a digital media piece when you're doing press releases for platforms like 7 Days.
So you're going to have to pay them to put your press release out digitally?
No, so digitally is typically free. Print is typically paid to print. So it does depend on, I don't know, every, smaller newspapers especially. So there might be some opportunities to engage with those folks for free because they're not getting as much submission as a 7 Days would be. But typically for these bigger newspapers that you would get more eyes on, it is free for digital, pay for print.
Okay.
Oh, Eric, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I was going to say, Laura, the other thing that I found is really helpful is to do a little background research and find out who the writers are that are doing in particular publications, who is the arts writer for 7 Days, for example, and develop a relationship with them and just be a good trusted person. I just have people, that I reach out to and just say, if you ever knew anything to do with business in the Metro Valley, I'm the guy, and you get to know them. And then so when you have your specific press release, you can send it to that particular person and, as a story idea. And I think that that's a lot more useful than just winging it at publications that are hitting a lot of stuff. And, I'm really glad to know that Brittany brought up about the whole idea of the event calendars. because that has been really successful. And we had a really good anecdotal thing this Mother's Day with what the Round Barn did, and that it was clearly picked up by 7 Days that they were populating their calendar using our calendar. So, and I know the DEV does that a lot too. So, just be aware. And I think it's always worth just, building relationship.
Yeah. And typically, these are folks that you can find their contact information on the webpage itself. If you don't want to dive fully into, especially 7 Days that has like 1,000 web pages in their website alone, I usually go to Google and get a lot more specific with the keywords. So art editor, 7 Days Vermont. Boom. And usually that'll be on page 1. It'll have their name. And typically I always like to use and leverage LinkedIn to connect with these folks. So if you are active on LinkedIn, these are, I would also follow the media on your business's Instagram and Facebook pages, really any platform on social media. But if you're looking to make more of that personal connection with them, utilizing LinkedIn, so that way they get to know you, they get to check out your profile. And as Eric mentioned, we live in Vermont. It's 2 degrees of separation here. If you're not related to the person, you're probably, it's their neighbor down the street. So it is a lot easier to, have these pieces picked up by media if you do start a connection with them in a more personal way.
There are also social media people out there that do highlight events. Travel Like a Local, I think, is one.
Yeah.
And Laura, it might be helpful for you to also message out to Find and Go Seek. They do a lot of family events, especially on weekends. They'll highlight, these are the events you might want to take your family to. So maybe reach out to them.
That's a great point. I'm going to look on the other side. I have a running list of Vermont influencers that might be, but yes, you mentioned Erin from Things to Do Vermont. There's also Julie, I can't remember. I know her when she was doing social media management, but then she switched to family influencing in Vermont. So like Sandy Hango is popular on TikTok. She does skiing all around Vermont with her kids. So there are folks that are very much monetizing, doing content, and would be happy to experience, like, you're already providing the opportunity for them to monetize their content. So thinking about where might be some like family influencers that would be interested in coming to the event and partnering.
Thanks.
Yeah. And I did find this list. It's not a very long one, but there are a few folks that have dabbled in the art of influencing in Vermont. Yes, Sean, I can definitely send it in the chat. Here we go.
Yeah, I just think that'd be helpful for everybody to just have it. Thank you.
Absolutely. I just want to make sure I'm grabbing the right link. So I think of, Senator, who formerly known as Rocket, who does Eat Vermont. He's everywhere right now. So this is a list that would get you started. Again, this is a collaboration spreadsheet that I made with like a few marketing friends of mine. So it's not the most robust, but this is one that we started building because our clients often, they're looking for opportunities to collaborate. For anybody who was at Vermont Tourism Summit, there is another marketing team that did specifically tourism influencing. So I could always put you in contact with Olivia too, if that's something that you want to talk about. That's her expertise.
I have a question. I'm on the board of Mad River Valley Arts.
Awesome.
So it's a nonprofit. I don't know if you have anything specific, if nonprofits have a different niche. I'm not sure they do, but I guess my question is just how often now, like what is the theory now about how often you have to be posting on Instagram in a day or in a week for you to actually be seen? Because we have the issue where I don't think we're publishing enough, and we hear like, I can't believe someone didn't know about our event. and it was on Instagram. Well,
Yeah.
probably not enough because you didn't get in front of people and you didn't get in front of people at the right time. So I'm just curious what your read is on that now. Thanks.
Yeah. So it does depend on and also I'm going to pull up Instagram while I'm at it and look at your specific channel if that's okay. What is your Instagram handle so I can take a look? Oop, Catherine, you're on mute. Sorry.
It's MAD Arts 802.
Perfect. Perfect. I always get a better read when I'm actually looking at it. So yeah, so I do see that there are some opportunities to optimize the profile. So really, when we're looking at Instagram in particular, we want to make sure that our profiles are optimized. Then we create to attract people, and then we engage with folks. So optimize, create, engage, which create tends to be the media piece of that. Before I address that, I want to make sure we do address the optimization, and then engaging with folks. So specifically looking at Mad Arts 802, I do see that optimizing their, nonprofits, you folks are kind of in this unique arena where you have a mission statement that oftentimes that is what you use as your profile bio at the top. So for you, it's our mission is to share diverse exhibition experiences through contemporary visual arts and design. If there is anything else that people need to know about your business, that needs to be in the profile bio. So do you offer events? Do you offer, is there an upcoming event that you can put in this profile bio that essentially gives people it's not a call to action quite yet, but tells people, art show 610, at wherever it's going to be. If you are able to utilize that profile bio and give them that information at the top, this is leaning into what we call above the fold, which is, traditional media. We think of like newspapers. Our Instagram bios at the top, that is our above the fold. So when somebody sees your individual single piece of content, the next thing they're going to do is click into your profile and they're going to see what's at the top here. We want to make sure that that is creating demand in order to retain them as a follower, like that this is so aligned and relatable to them that they want to hit follow. So that way they are following you. So that way they see your next piece of content that you work hard to see. So I would also recommend with your profile name, right now it's Mad River Valley Arts.org. It seems like a very small thing, but I would even spell out organization. I would make sure that you're leveraging all of the characters that you can use, maybe adding an emoji if that feels appropriate to your branding strategy. So that way it keeps people reading from left to right. Again, it seems like such a small change, but that pop of color brings people's eyes down and across. So they're reading the whole piece of information that you're providing them. So that's to optimize. And optimizing also is including keywords in your captions and involving some of these keywords that the algorithm picks up to push out to your target audience. So that's another thing I would recommend is identifying 10 to 15 keywords. And the easiest exercise, if you don't have, the keyword, like this is oftentimes, something you can use ChatGPT to use, saying like, I'm trying to think of 10 to 15 keywords that are search engine optimized that I can include in my Instagram captions to reach this audience and identify that audience, like a specific script that then it would help generate some ideas. If you're not using technology like that, I always like to tell people to use the process of imagine your ideal person, whoever your target audience is sitting down at a computer and at google.com, and they're trying to type in keywords to find a business like yours, to find a nonprofit like yours. What words would they type into Google if they didn't know your name in order to find your organization? And so that's what we should be including in this profile bio in these captions. So that's to optimize. And then we can move into more of these creation pieces that frequency is not as important as consistency and community building. So yes, when you have an event, for example, like a pop-up class, it is always ideal. It does depend on the size and the of the class. So if it's like a smaller pop-up, I do recommend an average of 3 weeks before it's happening. If it is like a bigger event, such as like the craft fair, you're going to need a lot more lead time with promoting that. So with events in particular, typically it's broken down into 3 different phases. You have this, you're creating like a hype, you're creating a teaser. Think of like a movie trailer where something's coming, you're not maybe giving them all the details, you're asking for feedback in the design process, the decision making process. These are pieces that are very often done through Instagram stories because it is a little bit more interactive. It's a little bit less pressure on your end to create, a fold on graphic. And it's just reaching people in more of a community audience interacting way. And then you have the full announcement drop. And this is exactly what you've been doing. That I would say any really important piece, you can pin up to 3 posts at the top of your profile also. So that's something, if you aren't able to constantly just repeatedly, like we've got this event we got coming up, like if you only have 1 graphic to work with too, pinning it to the top keeps it at the top for the duration of the time that you need it promoted until you manually tell it to unpin from your profile, and then it goes to the back to the chronological time in which you posted it. And then afterwards, so if these are classes that you are, maybe they're part of a series, maybe you are doing a benefit that happens year after year, not losing that momentum. So I call it like the in case you missed it part. So these are places that they are good opportunities to encourage people to sign up for your email list if you have one. To, hey, did you miss this event? Well, you missed a really good time. Here are all the photos from it. Here's how much fun we had. Here are the vendors that participated. We want to thank our sponsors. These are posts that, you are wanting to capture the people that just couldn't attend for whatever reason and keep them close to your community. That's also community building, where then the sales will happen more in your email list, which actually have higher conversions. But social media is really this brand awareness piece with the ultimate goal of bringing people closer into your community in a more personal way. Last but not least is to engage. So for you all, I actually think that this piece leans a little bit heavier than the frequency in which you are posting. I'm seeing that we're working with about a 2-to-1 ratio of followers, so your followers to following. I would personally like to see you all get even higher with how many people that you're following. And because especially in a place like Vermont, where it is 2 degrees of separation, that will naturally have people follow you back, especially community members that share your mission with you and your good work that you do, and that'll naturally increase your follower count. So when you are in that more create mindset of pushing out media, it's landing on more people's news feeds. You're getting more engagement naturally, especially for those newer followers that keep your algorithm spinning. And then that will push back out to the 263 people that are currently on your list. So that's why I'm always nervous to say you should post 3 times a week. Like, that's not always doable depending on the team that you're working with, it always makes me a little nervous when that's the question. If we were to give a number to it, I would say if you can show up for your community 2 to 3 times a week on a grid post, that would be great. I would say even more so, you can take pressure off of you by also incorporating stories. So Instagram stories, they are more behind the scenes. They are a little bit more interactive. It still allows you to interact with your audience. They are temporary. They only last 24 hours. But I think for what you're doing, that's totally okay. Like a behind the scenes of the class that you are hosting at that time, it's going to make people want to be part of it. Like they're part of the action already, which makes them more emotionally involved with it. So that way, you know, when you are asking them like, hey, did you feel like you missed out? Like join our email list. So that way, you know, when the next one's happening. It plays on their emotions in a way that then they feel driven to take that action of joining your list. So that way you do have higher conversions. Also, same with that call to action of make sure you follow us to be the first one to know when we go live on, you know, for events, for ticketing. So in your case, I would actually lean for the next 30 days. I would focus more on getting that following count up. And as I mentioned to Laura, any other art associations that are in the state, because they are often talking to your target audience. It might just be it might also be that your target audience might be going elsewhere in the state if they don't know that, you know, your nonprofit exists. So this is how you start to develop relationships with people through an online channel that in person they can send you referrals. So any art enthusiasts, any art supply stores, and I would expand that like arts and crafts, because oftentimes people are doing both. Any of like school organizations, PTOs, or PTO associations, thinking about really like who is your audience, who has attended classes in the past, and where would these people be interacting with? Oftentimes these folks are also like the arts and crafts people. They're also usually the ones you'll find reading at a bookstore. So bookstores are great audiences to follow as well. Bookstores, especially starting with folks in the Mad River Valley and then slowly expanding to the rest of the state. With this plan, I do want to mention the caveat that you do want to pay close attention to how many people you are following in one single shot. If you do, this seems like a lot of people, but it's actually not. So I would not follow more than 150 accounts in a 24-hour span, because that will red flag your algorithm to say, oh, they're trying to spam bot people. So I always just like to put that caveat that yes, grow your follower list. Try not to do too many people at once. And then real quick, and then we're going to move on to the next question. But my best hack on how to find new accounts to follow, Miranda Dalton came up with this term that is not mine. I'm just crediting her on it. So anchor businesses. So folks like Mad River Valley's account who are already following businesses, go to their account and go use that following list. There's a search bar at the top when you click into either followers or following, and use those keywords you're talking about. So art, supplies, PTO, these are all keywords that usually people would have in their username or their name. So using those anchor businesses like the Lawsons of the world, Vermont Womanpreneurs, that's a huge one that I use as an anchor business. Mad River Valley, any of the Stowe organizations, any Sugarbush, think of like the really big profiles, like the popular profiles near you. Start with those and go see who they're following and use that search bar at the top to go find your people. Eric, yes.
Yeah, and Catherine, one of the other things I was thinking too, as Brittany keeps talking about community and how to build community and create this web within, within the Valley. And I would encourage you to take a look at, look at your posts on Mad Arts 802, is that they're all internally focused. They're all about, about what's going on at Mad River Valley Arts, which is great. But I think it's really important to show yourself within the community and showing art within the community. And, whether it be like Troy's statues at, on Bridge Street over at All Things Bright and Beautiful, or the local artwork at Lawson's, or things like that, and you can point that out, and that's a great way to partner with organizations. And look at people like the product think tank, Canteen Creamy. They do a really good job of highlighting. Mad River Lodges does a really nice job of that too. They're highlighting what's going on in the valley as a way of drawing attention to themselves. And there's some people out there doing it really well, but I would look externally a little bit more.
Catherine, I'll tell you too, at the collection, we sell a ton of art supplies. We are definitely a local place that artists are coming, like if they don't want to order online or don't want to do a deeper dive out of the valley to get like more serious supplies, but we sell quite a bit. So if you want to do something together, just let me know. I'm happy.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. And Yvonne, I feel like you're like a champion for just like bringing people together too with what you're doing. And as Eric and Yvonne mentioned, Catherine, if in the content itself, you're able to, I'm not saying you should absolutely make sure that you're promoting your events. If you can incorporate the people aspect and the community aspect, that also gives you opportunity to tag other people, which I saw you tagging Mad River Valley. That's awesome. Tagging yourselves, tagging other people as you, like the Lawsons, for example, that was a great example because they have tens of thousands of followers. Like if you are able to build relationship with them and then they share stuff on your page, that just starts this like web of supporting community, which they're a very community oriented organization. This just starts this whole web of how do you get your name out there? Well, that's also thinking about, like, I like to look at it like a Venn diagram where like, where do your audiences like match up? And then how can you, like two organizations or more, support one another in that way. And so thinking about when it comes to the content itself, how do you incorporate things that are promotional? Yes, but also talking about the culture and the people that you support, and incorporating natural storytelling with that. Like, we took a walk over to Lawson's to go visit this artist's work who we've been working with for X amount of years, tag them in the caption. We love to see our art hung up all around the Mad River Valley. Thank you so much, Lawson's, for supporting our artists. Giving gratitude, giving a shout out to the artist. The artist feels like, oh my gosh, like these folks are supporting me even more. And that encourages that cross promotion.
Yeah, and it's interesting that if you look at Lawson's Instagram, they're very internally focused. Very rarely do you see them, and it's funny because they are such a, community-driven thing. I mean, that's like, they're giving so much money away and all of that, and they clearly like to think of themselves that way, but it doesn't show in their social media feed. And so, maybe we can teach them by example a little bit, because they also are bummed out that they're not getting, that they're not getting more people, more traffic, and they view the valley as a destination. And why aren't people coming here as a destination? They're not really doing anything to help promote that. So what I'm suggesting to you, Catherine, is not terribly different from what one of our biggest marketers in town does. So it's interesting to watch this because I'm looking at all of what's going on in the valley. So
yeah, and I'm looking at their posts here too. I mean, I haven't like kept up with all of Lawson's. I can imagine that a lot of that work is happening in their Instagram stories, is my guess, because they are like, just looking at their photos, it it is a lot of like, it is some community too, like for the impact report, for example. But their grid is, you know, on the higher end of aesthetics. So I'm also guessing that a lot of that work happens in their stories.
I'm thinking too, Catherine, one thing that you could take on is there are so many makers in this valley. You could actually be the spearhead for the creativity in the valley and have, because you have that one physical location that you can bring so many makers to and highlight, you know, the fiber arts in the valley, the you know, the ceramic studios, and bring those inward towards your community and highlight the Mad River Valley as a creative place. And your shows and programs are part of how they can join in the creativity of the valley. To kind of give it a more social voice, and get people behind the creativity included.
Yeah.
I like that. That's a great idea.
Yeah. And that's community building. You know, how can we incorporate, like when we think of the content pillars, you might have heard like entertain, educate, inspire, convince. Another way that I've heard another creator say it is, you know, how can you be humorous, helpful, and heartfelt? And I think that heartfelt really, that's one that you can lean on and really highlighting the people that you work with, because then naturally the storytelling will be, here's how I've helped them. And the folks that are looking at your content will be able to relate to it. Yeah. But thank you for asking, Catherine. That was a great question.
Hi,
All right.
Brittany. I'm Blaine with the Mad River Lodges. And
Oh.
my question is, would you make the social media posts more personal or informational? Like, for example, our like marketing person, she likes to post like random, like almost AI generated posts, which I'm personally not a fan of.
Nah,
And
me neither.
it looks so bad, like completely unpersonable. But then like my mom wants to post like a picture of me graduating college, which I also think has nothing to do with the business. But I want to hear your opinion on that.
Absolutely. While I am giving my opinion, what is your Instagram handle so I can look it up at the same time?
Mad River Lodges.
Mad River Lodges. Okay. So I have a lot of thoughts and opinions on personal, so truly personal things. That is like your graduation. Great for an Instagram story because it's still connecting with the audience and celebrating. It also is a little bit more informational, especially if you like a retail store, for example, that I manage their accounts. Like they just had to close for their son's graduation. Like that is pertinent to their business because it affects their opening hours. I would not encourage that unless it is spun in a way that speaks to the mission of what you're doing. So if you were like graduating with your degree in tourism, for example, and it's a family photo and your mom's the one posting like, I can't believe we're finally reaching the second generation of Mad River Lodging. We're celebrating today. That's a little bit different than because it's part of the business's longevity story. If it's something truly personal, I would keep it on Instagram stories. For content in general, you do want to think about, so let me ask you this. Who is the audience that, like, can you describe the clientele that you currently work with? How would you describe them? Not to put you on the spot. This is probably the hardest question, by the way.
Dad, do you want to chime in and answer? I haven't been around that long.
Hi, Brittany. I'm Sean Frank. I'm Blaine's father. So, let me help him out a little bit here.
Yeah, no worries.
So the audience that we're trying to reach, it really goes across the gamut, right? So we assume, or I assume, that the audience, generally speaking, and I could be way off here and correct me if I'm wrong, but is more of a younger audience that's using Instagram that would drive business. And younger meaning, in my mind would be ages like, I don't know, 18 to 35.
Yeah.
I would think that's like the demographic of what this marketing would go towards. So, however, that being said, we have people who come and stay at our lodges that are in their 70s also. So
yeah,
I would say that would be the demographic that we'd be looking to, to hone in. Now, please give us your opinion on that.
Yeah. So age is always good. I would also consider, what activities are they into? So with Mad River Valley, with talking about, I'm just going to focus on, the Gen Z to late millennial, which I fall in that demographic. And the reason why a lot of us are in Vermont is for that adventure, is for the hiking, the biking, especially in the Mad River Valley, who, has all these new trails that just came about, and the beer gardens, and, just like wants to do cliff jumping, especially when it's summertime. And I also want to acknowledge that who you're speaking to, especially in tourism and lodging, might change depending on the season too. So I just want to acknowledge that. But focusing on, where we are right now with it becoming summer, hopefully having more sunny days and it being outdoor season, thinking about the folks that are the more adventurous type. So how can you speak to them in a way that makes your business fulfill their needs? With a lot of this demographic that's younger, entertainment, humor, that's the way you're going to catch them. And also that is attracting the algorithm too, because yes, likes and comments are great. We do want to aim for that. But what holds a little heavier weight in the algorithm, because ultimately Instagram, especially, their goal is to provide content on the platform that is special to Instagram. When we're thinking about social media as a general global business, because that's what it is, it's a business, they're trying to compete with TikTok. So original content that is you can only find on Instagram, which Instagram usually will get a TikTok trend 3 to 4 weeks later. I would recommend thinking about how can you present your content in a way that is attractive to specifically that audience. So it's going to be a little bit more humorous, leaning into what they are consuming online, of course, spinning it in the unique value proposition that your business fulfills for them. So for these folks, I'm thinking about, what is their socioeconomic status? If you're trying to reach young people that don't necessarily have as much income, it might be something that's more monetary. If it is, if you provide a convenience factor, for example, these folks don't want to have to pick up a phone to make a reservation. If you can make it as easy as clicking a button for them and then they're going on vacation next week, then that's what you lean on. If the effort of if you provide, for example, rental equipment at your lodging facilities for these adventurous people, so they don't have to put as much effort in packing up all their fishing gear and their bicycles and all that stuff, which ultimately saves them money. That's a message to lean on. So thinking about what does make your business unique and the properties that you are trying to rent out, and making sure that, you do have a great, I'm just looking at who you're including in the photos, for example, and you're using younger people in your photos. So that tells me that you are aligning your content with the imagery that a young person probably in the content wants to see young people in the content in order to imagine themselves sitting around this I think it's a bonfire, but everybody's sitting around near the river. So family reunion is what you talk about in this caption. I think that's great. As far as how to attract more eyes, I want you to go back to the conversation we were just having with Catherine and Laura and thinking about how do you get these numbers up? For you, I don't think it's as much your content, because your content does show, it makes it relatable to the person. And I really don't see, much change that would need to happen with the content. I think you're doing a good job in placing people within the reality of what they would be experiencing. Especially with reels and utilizing reels. Like I see you showcasing people golfing, like the amount of activities. If we're talking specifically ways to improve the content, I would say adding a little bit more context to the caption. Especially I'm looking at this reel that you posted 5 days ago with Blaine bringing some recruits up to the weekend. So in this case, I would expand even more. Talk about, we did this, my buddies and I had these types of adventures, we'd come back. What did you enjoy about it? And maybe tagging some of the places if you went to different places to incorporate some of that community building and getting it shared across more different regional platforms. But as far as like the pictures in the reel, I would not change anything about this personally.
And sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
Do you have any
okay.
like social media trends like that businesses are posting that like are seeing more attention than others? Like, do you have any ideas?
In the last 2 weeks, I would say maybe 2-3 weeks, we have seen businesses do POV shots as a customer. And let me explain that a little bit more. So imagine you have, imagine you are navigating the camera, right? You are posting a reel where, trying to think of my improv skills. Come on. So this might be instead of, which I would still do a video of like the highlight reel of you and your friends having all this fun. Maybe it's a shot of you in a kayak going down the river, for example, where it's like, I know what's something that you wanted to like escape from, like POV, you finally get a moment of silence from your family. Like that is just like a very extreme example, but like, that's why I go on vacation. So, but that also intrinsically showcases the activity that you're doing, the nature that you're doing, or the nature that you are interacting with, the, like if you are trying to market to people that are just trying to escape and have like a quiet vacation, then that's going to speak to them. Another one might be, you're looking for your golf ball that you shanked at hole 9, like POV shots that it's being posted from the business's account, but it's in the point of view of the customer.
Okay.
And
yeah, I
that's,
like that a
we've
lot.
been seeing so many of them. I don't know if you're on TikTok, but you should like think about like, especially Vermonters just like haven't adopted TikTok. And this is why they should, is because if you are utilizing Instagram, you will often see that happen 3 weeks ago on TikTok.
Yeah,
so you can
definitely.
actually be an early adopter on Instagram. And I always like to say, if you see something twice, it's a fluke. If you see something 3 times, it's a trend. And when you see it the 3rd time, that's when you should think about, how can I do this for my own business? Because it usually won't be picked up by somebody in the local area yet, because they're not on TikTok. So as you're scrolling on TikTok casually, Blaine, I would have a collections folder. I do this for the Winfield Creative of like, be listening for different sounds, be listening for different topics that people are talking about, listening to different like ways to film things, paying attention to different businesses that are getting a lot of attention right now. And I'm trying to think of some off the top of my head. There's one I saw this morning. Oh my gosh, I cannot remember the name of it, but they did a really good example of one. It was more of an extreme example, so I'm not going to say it on camera, but well, it's not bad. So it was, the scrunchie that prevents, like, that is made for women, that prevents, like, it covers your drink at bars. They posted a TikTok, like, I saw it this morning on my newsfeed. That one was a phenomenal example. I just can't remember the product name. Phenomenal example of them filming a TikTok in the POV of the customer. And it immediately, like, I watched the full, like, 2-minute thing, because it spoke to me. And, like, I thought, until I looked and saw the blue check mark, I thought it was, like, really a girl being, like, talked at a bar by some, like, skeevy guy, until I was like, wait, she's promoting something. And she was promoting the product. So that's an example of how to do it in a POV, where, like, you are putting yourself in the most relatable position to speak to your target audience.
Yeah, definitely. And just to clarify, you would do away with, like, the weird, like, AI generated photos like this?
Yeah, I would do away with AI generated. I would much rather see it be taken on an iPhone than be AI generated.
I 100% agree. Yeah.
And because authenticity is, like, the word of the year for content creation, especially, like, that is so much more important than having stuff be AI generated. And we are going to see more and more and more. One, the spreading of misinformation. So you don't want to be blamed for that. But also, technology is going to start tagging it. I don't know. It's already starting to roll out, but Instagram especially is going to start tagging everything that's AI generated.
Mhm.
So if you want to be seen as, trustworthy, authentic, all the words that are good words to be associated with, getting ahead of, like, not putting out AI generated stuff because it's going to be tagged very soon, if not already, that's going to be super important, because that's going to cause less work for you down the road.
Awesome.
I wanted
Thank you.
to can I give an example. I think that Mad Bush Falls does a really good job creating sort of mood and feeling for what product or what kind of overnight experience that they offer. And they have money behind them to be able to really do this. To just see an example of someone who's spending some money, and I think really does capture a feeling like, if I go there, it's going to look like this experience. They do a really good job, I think, on their Instagram.
Yeah. I mean, money is, of course, like, if I could get a branding photo shoot every week, I'd do it. But yeah, which, that is also the trade-off of, like, what is the return on investment? And also, as you think about how can you, like, start these partnerships with people. I mean, I'm sure that, thank you, Amy. Thank you for stopping by. Thinking about, like, are there opportunities to partner with folks like the Kinses? Are there opportunities to do in exchange for services? That's how I first got my first photos, was in exchange of services with a college kid who just wanted a portfolio. They had the equipment. I needed somebody to hit the little button. But are there opportunities to get what you want and what you need for your elevated branding, but do it in a way that works for your business? And that comes with forming those relationships, as we mentioned. There are a ton of, especially very talented college students who are at all the different universities around the state that are just looking for opportunities to build their portfolios. So that is one way to think about how can we utilize the people that are in our state. I'm thinking about, I'm looking at Mad Bush Falls right here. Some of these things are probably photos from a few years ago too. So just know that it is a long-term investment, especially if you are investing in branding photos that do have evergreen themes to them instead of seasonality to them. Seasonality might be important for folks that are doing year after year events, and that this is an event that will be continuing. Like, I think Laura and the Crafts Fair, this is something that those photos would be a main pillar of the event promotions year after year. But as far as Mad Bush Falls go, I mean, I'm looking at their reels here, and this was shot by an iPhone. The one that is a few rows down, but it's the two folks on the tandem bicycle with the dog in the back. That is very much an iPhone shot photo, but just color corrected a little bit. So just know that some of the photos that you see online are also probably edited slightly to fit the overall aesthetic that they're going for. So in this case, they brought up some of the oranges, which matches their Mad Bush Fall logo. So just know that there are some opportunities to still use the phone in your pocket, but in post edit, making it a little bit more branded to yourself. And if you have any questions on that, we did do a full in-person training about how to do content creation from your pocket. So check that out. That was the live one, but it's on YouTube. Yes, Eric. Oop, you're on mute.
iPhones are amazing and you can do a lot with them, but please know, like the folks at Mad River TV have really good camera equipment that you can use, and it's free and it's pretty easy. If I can do it, you can do it. And
that's their tagline.
Yeah. And it's it's good quality stuff. And their caveat is they need to provide content for Mad River TV. But if you can do a behind the scenes at whatever business, this is what's going on, and you can have that footage and use it forever.
That's a great point. Yeah. Can you repeat that business name one more time?
The Mad River Valley Television.
Awesome.
Which is our community public access Wayne's World channel.
That's amazing. Yeah, there are a few folks around. So Media Factory is ours up here. It's good to know that the Mad River Valley has access to that. Usually it does take a little bit of like a quick equipment training, but then folks like that, I mean, there you go. Now you have an into the television station too while you're at it.
So Eric, this is Sean. So is that something that they would come in and film, or they would just teach you how to use their equipment?
They'll teach you how to use the camera. If you have a particular event, they might come and do it. Like they might go, they definitely do stuff over at Mad River Valley Arts. But for someone like you, I would imagine it's just, go borrow it and, for a day or two and, do what you want to do with it. And, like I said, they'll help you. They'll teach you how to use software and, do basic stuff. And you can do basic stuff. Like I'm doing the tailgate stuff all by myself, like clearly. And it's, it's low down and easy, and the price is right.
That's cool. Thank you.
I bet Blaine can figure it out.
The worst part is not having a tripod. If you are to invest in anything, if you're doing things solo, a decent tripod.
They have really good ones.
Oh, perfect. Awesome.
Brittany, would you suggest getting like a GoPro? Like the GoPros really make a big difference, you think? Especially with POV, right? I would think that.
If you are doing, like, you have adventurous people that are willing, let's say you have like one helmet, for example, that you give to, somebody that's staying, or, Blaine's friends come up for the weekend and they film a bunch of content, for example. GoPros are good for that adventurous type. There are also different types of what we call gimbals. I would do a little bit of research on what would make the most sense for what you are trying to capture. Because there's some 360 cameras that they're like, for example, there's a few TikTokers that do a lot of like big skiing. I can't remember the guy's name, but he is like always on the mountains and like rescuing kids who like fall down the mountain. But he does a 360 camera where it's essentially a stick that you hold that swivels, and the stick itself is blocked from, like, it's not in the point of view. So it's a really cool option. Now, of course, that takes one hand away. GoPros are attachable. They are a little bit more expensive, and it depends on if you can, depends on who's doing the content, but there are also different types of handheld gimbals that are, depending on your budget and your price range, you'll often see folks that are shooting concerts using those. It really it really depends on what you are looking to capture. If it's in water at all, I would recommend getting stuff that's waterproof, which is going to be a little bit more expensive. But there are different options out there depending on what you need. And nevertheless, I would recommend getting something that does offer a little bit of movement. So that way it's motion activated. And so whoever's doing the content creation, like that piece gets, one, it's a little bit smoother, but that piece gets eliminated from the human element of hiring probably not a professional videographer to capture it. Yeah. Great questions, though. I love this.
Brittany, do you have a recommendation for a noise canceling microphone that works with your iPhone?
Yeah, so I use. So this is actually one that I bought off of TikTok Shop. So it's kind of like this like no name brand. If you, I can send a link to this group to that would be helpful. But really, where did I buy this off of Amazon? I cannot remember, but they look like this. So it looks like this little microphone that comes with this little poof that essentially there's a clip back here. And then so you clip it, and you can also attach this little poof that, like, I am known to like pop my peas very hard. So like this prevents that. And then on this end, it's a receiver that, so this piece is a piece that you can see it plugs into a multitude of things. So this is for my Canon camera. This piece is for the old school iPhones, like a 14 or older. That's the iPhone I have, and then the newer iPhones. So essentially this wireless microphone, this is the type I would get. There's a ton of different options out there, and I would just check the reviews. This was only, I got a 2 set, and I think it was like $40, $50. You know, you'd have to charge it, but these are very popular with content creators. It's very easy to use. Of course, it's versatile with the different equipment that you might be using. So if you do end up, you know, going from iPhone to switching to a more professional camera, you can still utilize this. And as I said, this one comes with 2 in the pack. So if I'm doing an interview, I can hand one to this person, one to another person. But these are very popular right now. There are more expensive ones, which typically people use a brand called Rode. That is podcast equipment and, you know, higher end microphones that are lavalier is the type of microphone. So you want to look up lavalier microphones for your phone type, and then look at the reviews. And of course, based on your budget, yeah, that would be the type that I would recommend, though, if you're not doing anything to like Hollywood production.
Thanks.
Yeah. But great question. It's pretty crazy to see the evolution of content creation materials just even the last 5 years alone. I'm trying to look up real quick the brand. Yeah, this is it. Okay. I'm going to put this link in the chat real quick so you all have it. But here we go. It's a very long link, but yeah, that's what you'd be looking for, is a lavalier microphone. Any other questions? We're almost to time.
Is there a specific tripod you would recommend, or something to stay away from, like
Definitely staying away from like cheaper ones. I mean, early in business, I, went with like an Amazon Basics and it was crap. I personally like to use things that specifically stick to my iPhone. So an Octobuddy, which is, it looks like a bunch of like suction cup tentacles. It's going to sound so weird, but essentially it goes on the back of your iPhone and it allows you to stick to certain things. Personally, I like those better than an actual tripod. As far as when I'm like in the woods taking content, there is a type that I bought at Best Buy that I think it's in my car because I've been traveling lately. It's like a smaller tripod, so it doesn't hit the ground. It's more of a tabletop one, but it has flexible legs that wraps around different places. So like fences, different trees. A tabletop one is always good for folks that don't necessarily need to have full body shots. If you have tables around you, it's a good option. If you are thinking about getting one that is, it touches the ground, I would make sure that, especially Yvonne, because you're a little bit taller, that you get one that gives you good height availability, because you don't want to be shooting too low. And making sure that if you are getting one that touches the ground, that is a little bit higher quality. So usually the thicker ones with thicker materials, not as much like an Amazon Basics, option. Those tend to like wiggle. It just like they don't travel well. They just like feel cheap. But I would say the tabletop one is a good option. And the little adjustment piece is always ideal to have. So that way you can switch it out based on what equipment that you are using it for. So for example, the tabletop one, it has like the little, like the screw top. So that way I could put my camera in it, but it also has the attachment that it does hold my phone in both ways. So that's what I would recommend is a tabletop one if you're comfortable with that. Yeah. Yes, Eric.
Constantly in this whole conversation, we've been talking about community and I keep harping on that because that's really what the function of the Chamber of Commerce is to build that foundation for us all to succeed. And, one of the things I want to keep bringing up, and I want to keep reminding people that we have this community business event planning calendar, which is designed as a back end. And it's, I've just posted it in the chat. And so you can take a look at that and everything, basically it's just what's going on throughout the year, being holidays and events and things going on so that we can plan well in advance of what's happening. So and it encourages collaboration. It gets you to think ahead. And I really encourage folks to use that. You can populate it yourself. You'll see some things that are highlighted or in yellow, things that have come up that people have questioned. Just yesterday, there was a posts about the 7 Days Daisies and promoting local businesses that have been nominated. And that would have been a really nice thing to know about 6 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And I knew about it, but I didn't really think much of it. And it's like, yeah, the chamber should have done something more with that. And next year it'll be on my radar because it's there. So keep that in mind. So again, we can encourage collaboration. If there's an event going on, with Meadow River Valley Arts, and maybe it's the retailers want to do a sidewalk sale, they see that it's there, and then they can double up and create a
unified campaign.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. So please use that. I just want to use this as an opportunity to make people aware that it's there.
Absolutely. That's a good plug there, Eric. Well, friends, that might be the end for us here if there's no other questions.
I think
I really enjoyed this.
This format worked really nicely. I think it's a really good thing to do.
Yeah. Should we continue it? I mean, I think it's a little bit of everything, honestly. lets me use my brain. Well, thank you all so much. If you have any questions after this, feel free. You can find me literally anywhere on the internet. So again, I'm Brittany Winfield of the Winfield Creative. You can find me Instagram, Facebook, wherever, LinkedIn, all the places. If any questions come up for you, feel free to bring them to next month, which next month would fall on July 8th. At 10 a.m. Do we still want to do 10 or do we want to change to 9:30? I'm
I
flexible,
I
but
thought we wanted to go to 9:30 because it was a little helpful for the retailers.
yeah, we could do that. So 9:30, July 8th, same Zoom link. Yeah, but look out for communications through the Mad River Valley. And thank you all for, showing up today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brittany. I really appreciate it. And also make sure you check out Brittany's website. She does a great blog and a great podcast that talks about trends and things. And that's really useful. And I encourage you to check that out as well. Thanks again.
So much.
Thanks,
Bye,
Brittany.
everybody.
Thank
Have
you,
a great day.
Thank you, Brittany.